All right, so as part of this well, changing over to a well, changing property from a city to a well supply, one of the main things you need is a pressure tank. These are a little bit more expensive than they look, so this is like $1,000 tank. But I happen to find this used um, cheap, like 150 bucks. It's a 86 gallon. It's the Well X Trawl by Amtrawl, and it is its model is here WX252. And get it to read. There you go. So this if I get this tank working, this is this nice tank, and the reason is every time you use some water, you don't really want to have to kick on the pump. So if you flush a toilet, that may be 10 gallons or 25 gallons or whatever. Um, that's really inefficient. Every time a toilet flushes, to have that pump do a startup and run and shut down is a waste of electricity. But additionally, with those pumps, they want them to start and run for a minimum amount of time, and it's usually measured by gallons or by seconds. So generally speaking, if a pump can start and run for a longer period of time, it's going to actually be better for the pump. It's going to cool it better, and etc. So a big pressure tank is going to be really good for efficiency and also better for the life of the pump. But this is $1,000 tank, so it's kind of like if you can save money getting a good deal on a big tank, that's the way to go. The problem is I saved money on this one, but it was waterlogged. And this is the first time I've ever dealt with a pressure tank, so I didn't know better. But when I went to pick it up, it was super heavy, and this was all water up here. And the top part with this little air Schrader valve should be air on the top side of the bladder, which is kind of pushing against the bottom side, which is water pressure. So it being waterlogged, the short answer is it's probably a no good tank. Basically, it is a no good tank. But I was kind of, one thing caught me off guard. The air pressure on the tank was literally zero. So who knows how long it was in service. Maybe, there is normal air pressure loss over time. Tires work the same way. The molecules in the air are going to eventually pass in between the gaps of the molecules in the rubber, diaphragm or the tires or whatever. That's why you're having to add a couple PSI a month. So if you go a few months without adding air to your tires, they'll be a little bit low. So this is the thing. I was thinking maybe this thing sat out in the middle of the field and the diaphragm is normally, okay, but a little bit of pressure loss might have dropped this thing to zero over several years. And then at that point, the diaphragm can't really seal correctly, and the water pressure being really high maybe push its way through. Now, probably that's not realistic. It's probably a pinhole leak. But being that this tank is $1,000 and I paid 150 bucks, and I could get a hold of the guy and say, hey, you sold me a junk tank, and he'll probably tell me pound sand. But I want to really know if it's usable. So here's what I've done. I pulled the Schrader valve out of that. I flipped this thing upside down, which was a beast because it was full of water. And I drained all the water out. I put a little air and I drained all the water out. And it came out kind of oily. There was nasty water in there. And then put the valve back in. I pressurized it to 40. So it's at 40 PSI on the air diaphragm, the upper part right now. And then on the bottom, I'm filling this with water main pressure, which is freaking high. It's like 100 PSI. So I'm just going to leave it. I'm just going to leave it for hours. I had to rig up a little fitting because this is an 1.25 inch connection to the pipe. So I made up something with just what I had. I don't want to go out and buy fittings for this tank that may be junk. So I've just got it adapted 1.5 inch down to 3/4 for a hose. And I'm just going to, it's been filling for a while. I mean, sounds to me there's this much water in it, or it's somewhere in this ballpark. So I'm just going to leave as much water pressure as I can on it for several days, and then I'm going to pull the hose and drain it out, check the pressure. If it's below 40, I know it's losing air into the water. If it's above 40, it's more than likely because the water is pushing through. Or also, air changes a lot with temperature. So 40 in the temperature I set it at. and then I'm going to tip it upside down, and if water again comes out that Schrader valve, I know the tank is junk. So this experiment would not be practical for a professional well person, but I'm really hoping to make this tank work, because otherwise I got another tank lined up, but it's much smaller, and it's, you know, with all the stuff I'm trying to pay for, I'm not really looking to go buy a $1,000 tank. So that's my first step right now. Alright, so I left it pressurized for quite a while, and I think it's going to be bad. I'm going to take the Schrader valve out now. It's gonna get loud. Get that baby in my pocket. So far all air, but I need to tip it up. Water. It's junk. Total bummer. So obviously there's a rupture in the diaphragm. That's how the water's pushing through to the air side. Crap.